Welcome back to the Grenadier podcast, Real Estate Uncovered. Today I speak with Leeann Watson, Chief Executive of Business Canterbury. Is Christchurch worth all the hype? You obviously love this business. Tell me what you love the most about it. Today, an absolute exclusive. Welcome back to the Grenadier podcast, Real Estate Uncovered. Leeann, can you introduce yourself to us?
Sure. I'm Leeann Watson, the Chief Executive of Business Canterbury.
Welcome to the Grenadier podcast. Tell me a bit about Business Canterbury. It's quite a new organisation, but with a big nod to the past.
Yes, absolutely. So we're new but old. So we have been around for 165 years, so not that new. But what we have done in the last 14 months or so is undergone a pretty significant transformation. And probably the most publicly visual part of that is our new name and our brand, Business Canterbury. So formerly known as the Canterbury Employers Chamber of Commerce, which is quite a mouthful. And we are still a chamber. The chamber is an international network, which is an important part of who we are. However, I guess bringing it into the 21st century and recognising that, you know, we're all about supporting Canterbury business. Business Canterbury seemed to be a much more natural fit for who we are and what we do moving forward, which is all about supporting the business community.
Beautiful. So Business Canterbury is the new name, but obviously business as usual. Tell us what your take on the Canterbury environment for business owners is at the moment.
Sure. Look, as a region, we are actually doing incredibly well, and in particular in comparison to other parts of New Zealand. Now, that doesn't mean that, of course, we have not been through a pretty challenging time really in the last sort of 3 to 5 years. And that's not unique to Christchurch and Canterbury, but what is unique is actually we've come out the other end, and we're actually now starting to really show some amazing signs of growth and really good business confidence. We do a quarterly business survey,
yes.
And over the last 2 quarters, what we've seen is a real turnaround in businesses' confidence, not only in their own earning potential, but also in the New Zealand economy. Which has been really, really positive. It's still a little bit slower than what we would like to see around businesses' intention to invest in their own businesses. So, you know, that's largely due to just that stubborn consumer demand hasn't quite picked up as quickly as business confidence. But, you know, off the back of things like the, drop in interest rates, we hope to see an improvement in that in the next quarter.
Yes. In terms of infrastructure around our city, there's some big projects happening. That must breed a bit of optimism.
Oh, absolutely. And I think, that's why we are the envy of many of our counterparts around the country where, we look at some of the growth projections. We look at the fact that, we've got a brand new convention centre. We've seen the huge boost that has brought to our local economy.
Yes.
When we have conventions on in the middle of Christchurch, you can see the vibe of people out and about in the central city, eating lunch along the terrace there,
yes.
spending in some of our retail outlets in the central city, which is amazing. And of course, we're a year away from the new stadium opening, which is super exciting, and we've got the Metro Sports facility yet to open. And so, the city as a whole is really, really in a great place. We're seeing businesses' confidence in the central city also, really turn a corner. It has been tough for a lot of those businesses off the back of, a global pandemic,
yes.
and then heading into a recession. It's been pretty tough, but I think they are starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel, which is really great.
Yeah, absolutely. I hear Christchurch sort of talked about as the second city. What does that kind of mean?
Yeah. Look, so we are the second largest city officially in New Zealand.
Beautiful.
And of course, we're the biggest city in the South Island, Christchurch. And what that really means is that when you look at the contribution that we provide to the national economy, it's 35 billion. Got that right? 35 billion. And so that's not insignificant.
It's a pretty serious chunk of money.
Yeah, it is. And of course, we've also got a really diversified economy. And so, for example, there's 14 billion of that is generated through our exports.
Yes.
We have a really strong manufacturing sector in Christchurch. We have a really strong health sector, construction sector. So we've got a really diversified economy. And what that also means is that it does provide us with the ability to weather some of those economic pressures differently to some of our other counterparts around the country where they're, like if you look at Queenstown or, maybe Central Otago area,
yes.
for example, so much of their economy is dependent on tourism.
Yeah.
Whereas we have a very mixed economy. So, when maybe the agriculture sector's not doing so well, the professional services and manufacturing sector might be doing better.
Yes.
And so it does enable us to actually just really ride that out a little bit easier. What it also means, though, is that we are a critical part of the supply chain across the rest of New Zealand. So when we think about how much reliance we have on our exporters in the South Island and Christchurch and Canterbury, our manufacturing sector relies on componentry coming into the country. So it's really important that we are seen as that supply chain connector for the rest of New Zealand as well.
Yes. Tell me about employment opportunities. How's our employment looking?
Yep. So again, we are outperforming the rest of the country. I think our figures, this is where I need to look at my notes, I'm sorry. I did say I was useless at remembering figures. So employment growth in Christchurch was 3.3% in comparison to 2.2% nationally. So again, we are growing faster than the rest of New Zealand.
Yeah.
And so that comes back to that business confidence and that optimism. So people are starting to, be more confident to make those investment decisions around starting to re-employ people, which is great.
And employment opportunities means migration perhaps to our city from other parts of the country. What are you seeing in that regard?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have this, and I think it's for 2 years running now, we have the highest net migration in New Zealand. And so what that means is that people are choosing to move from other parts of New Zealand, and they're choosing Christchurch as a destination where they want to live, where they want to bring up families, where they want to work, where they want to invest.
Yes.
And that is really important. And so, many people that I come across, every week have chosen to move to Christchurch, and for lots of different reasons, but predominantly there are things that potentially Cantabrians can sometimes take for granted.
Yes.
Christchurch is an easy place to live. We have affordable housing, we have plenty of land for further growth and development. We have, generally pretty good commute times and very limited congestion. I get a bit grumpy when it takes me 7 minutes to get to work instead of 3 if I travel at peak time. And when I talk to my my colleagues in Auckland about that, they generally sort of give me a bit of a weird look.
Yeah.
That means that the lifestyle that we have here, means you can get out at lunchtime to go and see, your child run a relay race at school, or you can get out and do something at lunchtime that you wouldn't necessarily do in Auckland. It means that from a productivity point of view for workplaces, if you've got people out on the road travelling to jobs, we're a whole lot more productive here than what they are in other parts of the country where they have some significant congestion problems. And so that ability for people to have a really strong quality of life here shouldn't be underestimated, because that is what is driving a lot of people to this city and to this region. And, and it's great to see that growth and that optimism. And it's changing the nature of, I guess, the city to a certain extent as well. We're seeing a lot more diversity.
Yes.
We're seeing that richness that brings, which is really exciting.
I know when I think back to Christchurch, say even 30 years ago, and we'd travel to Auckland and we would recognise that as being a very sort of multicultural city. Now our city feels richer for that experience as well now.
Oh, absolutely. And I think there is so much knowledge and expertise and just a general wealth and richness that that diversity in our community brings.
Yes.
And what we're seeing is another really interesting metric is the enrolment numbers across both universities, the University of Canterbury and the University of Lincoln. I think are the highest enrolment numbers for 3 years in a row.
Wow.
In comparison to any other university in New Zealand. And I think the same with ARA, our Polytech here as well.
Yes.
And so again, people are choosing to send their students to universities in Christchurch because it's safe, it's affordable, it's easy for them to get around, and it's just apart from the fact that it's, we have great universities here. I mean, the University of Canterbury, in particular, I know a little bit about. They're one of Business Canterbury's strategic partners, and they're doing some amazing things with some of the new curriculum. They're looking at micro-credentials, or they have micro-credentials. They're doing a whole lot of online learning. So they're a really progressive university, and so that's been recognised by people choosing to send, their children to university here. I have 3 children. 2 of them have gone through University of Canterbury. 1 of them's just started. And so it's a real testament to the universities here that people are actually looking at them and recognising them as world class.
Yeah. I was actually going to mention the university because week on week in the auction room, I'm meeting parents that are buying property here in Christchurch for their children to rent close to the university, Ilam, Avonhead, Burnside, that sort of location. And it's fascinating to me. And it's great that, you know, people are travelling, they see the value of the UC campus and University of Lincoln.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a, you know, it's a great example of, you know, how the economy drives those sorts of opportunities for development and, you know, further infrastructure and real estate in Christchurch.
Yes.
And, you know, wouldn't it be great if we could all buy houses for our students to actually live in? Mine still live at home, unfortunately.
Yes.
No, fortunately, I love having them at home, children, if you're listening. But of course, you know, that does provide another, I guess, injection into our local economy where, you know, we are seeing those sorts of opportunities be developed out of growing enrolment numbers at universities.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think also for real estate in Canterbury, we're really encouraged by the numbers that you're quoting. So that gives optimism to people, you know, looking to buy and sell real estate in Canterbury.
Yep.
I think, you know, that takes a lot of the risk out of it. We see those markets like Auckland are sort of boom and bust, but Christchurch is pretty a normal market. We're still the most affordable metropolitan city in New Zealand.
Yeah. And I think the other thing, you know, that we often lose sight of is actually the quality of the stock in Christchurch as well is very high quality. You know, we've obviously had a significant rebuild.
Yes.
And so, you know, when people look at real estate here, they're actually buying with confidence that, you know, it's either been renovated to a very high standard because of, you know, the some of the challenges that we have been through, you know, or we've got some really amazing new stock that comes onto the market. And as you say, still at very affordable prices. I mean, I speak to lots and lots of people that, you know, come to Christchurch and often, you know, on holiday or they haven't been for a while, and we were saying, you know, if you haven't been in Christchurch for the last 3 years, you haven't been to Christchurch because it's a very new
It's
city.
new.
Yeah, and often people are really surprised at what we do have on offer here. You know, the amazing, you know, hospitality, the bars and the restaurants, the quality of that, you know, in comparison to some other, you know, centres around New Zealand is second to none.
Yes.
You know, some of the retail that we have here is amazing. And then you look at, you know, the housing and the affordability of it. I mean, it's a pretty good picture to, you know, and actually that's selling itself. That's why we've got this, you know, the highest net migration in New Zealand.
Yeah. So it's boding quite well for our future. What are you excited about to see in the next year or two here in Canterbury?
Look, I'm really excited to see obviously the new stadium come on stream, the new Metro Sports facility. You know, that will drive our economy even further.
Yes.
You know, we've all been to concerts in Dunedin and Auckland, and you know, while it's lovely to visit you know, other centres as well, nothing like having a big concert in your own backyard, and you know, the economic benefits that those two facilities will bring. You know, having international sports teams and things here, or even, you know, high school competitions that last for, you know, at days on end, and people need to come in and, you know, the flow-on impacts on accommodation and transport. I think that's really exciting. What I'm also excited about is some of the new and emerging industry sectors that often people don't know about here in Christchurch. You know, we have a thriving aerospace industry in Christchurch.
Yes.
You know, we're I know just enough to be dangerous about it, but you know, we are sending things, you know, upwards that are doing some amazing things, and you know, we've got you know, really new and innovative farming practices. You know, we've got businesses doing some amazing things with, you know, with plant-based protein. And so we've got really innovative people here, and the reason that some of those businesses are here is because they understand the lifestyle that Christchurch and Canterbury brings, and they want to be part of it. And they can do their businesses from anywhere, but they've chosen, and I think the word chosen is really important, they've chosen to base themselves here. What that also brings is new opportunities for, you know, our young people coming out of university. You know, when you think about manufacturing as an example, you know, gone are the days when manufacturing is putting on a pair of greasy overalls and working on a factory line. I mean, yes, those jobs still exist, but so do jobs that involve robotics and automation and lean thinking. You know, a whole new industry is being developed by some of the innovative thinking that we see across some of those both traditional sectors like manufacturing and agriculture, but new and emerging industries like aerospace as well. So I think that provides huge opportunities for our young people coming through university. You know, talking about universities, now I think it's 1 out of every 2, so 50% of people that graduate from the University of Canterbury remain working in Christchurch
Isn't
in Canterbury.
that fabulous to
Yeah.
retain all that brain power?
Exactly. Now, some of them, of course, will maybe go overseas for a little bit, like
Of
a lot of young
course.
people do, and that's a good life experience for people. But often they will also come back, and we're seeing a lot of people come back and choose to come back to Christchurch as well.
Leanne, have you got one piece of advice that you could give to people looking at investing in business in Canterbury?
Yeah, absolutely. I had two pieces.
Yes.
First of all, why wouldn't you? And second of all, get in quick. Because actually Christchurch is, if you're looking for, a sure bet, if you're looking for something that will only get better, I think Christchurch is absolutely the place to be.
Beautiful. In terms of our inner city living, areas for Christchurch, for infrastructure, what are your thoughts around that?
Yeah. Look, I know there's been, quite a strong push on getting more people to live in the inner city. Obviously, after the earthquakes, there was a lot of stock that had to be brought down, and so we saw pretty much a mass exit of people living in the central city. And I can't remember the exact time frame, but I know that we went through a period of time where it was quite hard. There was a lot of stock available, and then all of a sudden it all sold. And so I think people have now started turning their minds to actually the central city is well and truly back.
Yes.
There are very few empty sites in the central city, and those that are empty, they've absolutely got plans for. We know, as I said before, we've got the convention centre now up and running. I didn't mention the Theatre Royal that opens, I think, next month.
Yes, the Court Theatre's open.
The Court Theatre, that's what I was referring to. Yeah. And then, of course, once the stadium comes on stream, again, that's just going to make such a huge difference. And so we have seen, we talk about the net migration. There are a lot of people that are coming into Christchurch where, central city living is exactly what they're looking for.
Yes.
If you're coming from places like Wellington, many people don't have cars. They don't drive cars in Wellington too much. A lot of people just commute via bus and trains and those sorts of things. And so that's different for us here in Christchurch. We are a city that has predominantly, had big sections. People drive everywhere. There's obviously a bit of a push to, get us into different transport options. But actually many people that are coming to choose to live in Christchurch, they're coming with that in mind anyway. So I think the central city, we are going to see more and more people choose to live in the central city, and there is still ongoing development opportunities in the central city, which I think we'll see more of.
Yeah, it's quite fascinating for us more traditional Christchurch people who like our double garage and our quarter acre section. Yeah. But, that's the modern world, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, and I think, there will always probably be, in certain cities in New Zealand, there'll be a mixture of both.
Yes.
I think that's part of the sort of the Kiwi DNA to, some people do like a little bit of land, some people like lifestyle blocks, but equally there is a lot of people coming into New Zealand and a lot of people, moving, younger generations coming through that actually don't want to spend all weekend mowing the lawns.
Exactly.
And they're quite happy to commute through public transport. And so I think that is changing and changing at pace. And so I think we will see, I guess, that push towards more central city living and people that have traditionally owned some of those larger properties over time. I know people that have sold up their big houses in Fendleton and now live in the central city apartments, and they love it. Yes. And so I think we will see that changing over time as well.
Yeah, and it's great that our city offers all those options to people, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And, I think that's important when we are, attracting people to be able to offer those different options for people. And, we talked about students before. I think there'll be a lot of students that will choose to live in the central city as well, because why wouldn't you when you've got, all the bars and the restaurants and you're going to have a stadium and everything's within walkable distance. It's a very accessible city. Yeah. And I think that makes it really easy for people to get around. Yeah.
Leanne, thank you so much for the insights that you've provided today. Great to hear that Business Canterbury is doing so well, and we look forward to the future ahead.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Thank you so much for tuning into the Grenadier podcast. We hope you've enjoyed the show. Please give us 5 stars. We'd really appreciate it.